Today I've brought out all of my succulents that we've been propagating over the last few months. We've still got a couple of these leaves left, and they're actually still producing roots, and some of them are starting to produce little leaves. So propagating with leaves takes an incredibly long time, but it does work. I usually like to propagate by cuttings because these are doing much better. I can already see tons of new growth on these. Some of them even have shot out entirely new growing points. So those have a huge head start over the smaller leaf cuttings. Last time we took a whole bunch of crown cuttings, and these are all of them here. Not a single one died. They're all looking really good, and they're starting to separate those bottom leaves with little stem segments, so they're growing up. We've also took a couple little segmented cuttings, and they're doing great too. One of them even has a brand new crown. This container also had that one little chrysula leaf, so that's still going. I don't see any new growth on it, but it looks nice and plump. It looks really green and healthy, so I think we're actually going to get a chrysula leaf to grow. It's just, again, they take so long. I'm not sure it's really worth it compared to just taking regular cuttings, because these chrysula cuttings were taken at the same time, and you can see they're already pretty tall, and look at all the roots on these. These were just growing in water. So these are ready to plant out anytime. They're actually as tall as this little cutting here, which used to be just a crown. So it's actually grown up quite a bit, but compared to just a standard cutting taken from an average sized plant, they're really quite a bit behind. This tiny pot also has a little graptopetalum and a little jade plant, both doing okay. You just want to keep up on the watering this time of year, because now that it's spring, they're really expecting more water to save up for summer. All that energy is going to go into plumping up these leaves. We're getting really nice, plump, succulent leaves, and some of these are actually starting to flower. This one over here has shot off from the main plant. We actually have a couple little rosettes, and then emanating from those are these tiny little flowers. They're really beautiful. Just delicate, barely visible white petals, and then these little tiny stamen that produce the pollen. We've got another one right behind it on this little cluster here. So that'll bloom in a couple days. So my plan today is to just transplant some of these kind of out of place ones. I really like the consistency of these really nice tall chrysulas in the back, so we'll give them their own container and take out some of these cuttings. Same thing goes with this tall one over here. We've got a really beautiful tall stacking chrysula, and then a few cuttings that I just slipped in. We've also got more cuttings here, here, and on the far edge here. So all these can just be sorted out by size, by height, and by what type of cutting they were. As our experiments have shown, anything with a crown and a few stem segments is going to do the very best. So they're going to get tall really quick. If we take this container, for example, these two cuttings here that are really struggling were upside down. So don't take your cuttings and flip them upside down. You want to try and keep them upright at all times. This was a segmented cutting without a crown, and then it formed two new rosettes, one of which is growing nice and vertically, and the other is kind of shooting off to the side. So we might actually take this one to propagate. These ones over here were actually much taller than this one, but we've taken cuttings and they've regrown multiple crowns. So these are like crown factories. We can actually remove these crowns and then propagate them just like these ones. But already I can see little roots forming down under there, and these little segments separating the leaves tells us that they're growing and that they're really healthy. So I'm going to pull all these apart into individual plants. Just going to very gently pull them apart. Try and keep as much of that soil on there because that's where those fine roots are. So there's one there. Actually, we might keep a few of these together if they're symmetrical. This little cutting really isn't doing so hot, so when we go plant them out, we're going to plant that in a different container. I want to try and start grouping them by size so that we don't have a bunch of little ones and big ones in the same container. I want to go for consistency. This is an upside down cutting, and it actually formed a new crown that's turned around and gone right side up. It didn't form any roots below the soil. It just kept trying to form crowns. So taking an upside down cutting is a really kind of a hard thing on the plant. So we always want to keep them vertical. Next up we'll do this one. I've removed as many cuttings as we can that weren't attached. These little ones are actually part of the same plant. So we could actually cut these back and take a few cuttings just to kind of make it really nice and consistent. These are all branching off of this really hardy stem. It's like a tree trunk. It's just gorgeous. These are actually two plants, so we could separate them, but you know, they're so beautiful side by side like this. We're going to try and keep them whole. So we'll just do them in their same pot. Replace a little bit of that soil, and this is that special potting mix with a little perlite and sand mixed in, just to keep them a little bit more dry. We can shape a little bit of the soil to try and center the plant because they were growing a little bit on one edge of the container. So we'll just tease apart a little bit of that soil without damaging too much of root. And we can kind of do a little bit on the other side too, just to loosen up those roots. And it's okay that they're leaning just a tiny bit. These are leaning just a little bit, but that's okay because if we face the sun on this side, they'll start leaning back towards this way. So we'll get them to grow nice and vertical. We just want to make sure we're happy with it before we backfill. And then we can come in, try and settle that soil all around those roots, down low and up high. And then we'll really soak these. A light press, just to settle them in. Now all the plants are about the same height, and just to finish it off, we're going to clear out anything we don't like. So I'm going to take this as a little cutting. We'll just let this heal for a couple days before we plant it out. We're going to take this one right down to the very bottom. Then we can strip the bottom leaf, or two if we want, and then let that heal and we can plant a whole new cutting. Now we're going to do something with this really tall one. I actually need to give this support, it's so tall. A lot of these stacking crassula eventually will get so tall that they just flop over and bend. So we may end up taking cuttings just to prevent that. But I know some of these are really so small that they kind of don't belong next to this large one. This is a cutting that we took of just one single leaf, and it's doing okay. It doesn't look great, but we'll keep that going and transplant it with the other small ones. Then we have a few medium-sized ones here. Just gently pry them off. Try not to damage those roots. There we go. There's another little leaf that never propagated. There, that'll be better off with some other plants. It's with its similar size. And now 2 more little ones here. And it appears that the other ones are actually combined and actually forming out of the stem. But that's okay, we can keep those. So because this tall one is just a little too tall for its own good, it'll start flopping over. So we're going to actually cut it down right about to the same size as these other 2. Just give it a little more consistency. I'm going to go a little low so that it'll crown out 2 new crowns and really fill in. But that'll be a lovely little plant. I'm going to be using 2 identical containers for all these medium-sized cuttings. Just got a little bit of our potting mix, and this has got a little perlite and sand just to keep those succulents dry. And we'll see just how many plants we can fit in here. I know we've got a whole lot of this size, around the 4-inch size range. Some of these have tons of crowns. Look at this one. This one has a crown all the way down here. It's got another 2 up here, and then another 1 at the very top. That's amazing. So that one will be over here. We'll just separate them by size as best we can. But I do want to really pack them in. Those 2 can stay together, I think. We're already filling these pots up. I think that makes a nice grouping. And these 2 can come over here. So that'll be 2 nice lovely pots. I just need to backfill around these now, and then we can center them exactly how we want them. So I'm just going to lightly fill a little bit, and now we can adjust them however we like. So we'll settle that soil first, and then we can cluster them up in the center in nice groupings, or we could space them out so they look full. Kind of like them in a group like that in the center. So we'll go for that on this one, and then we might space the other ones out a little bit more. And then these ones we can try spacing them out so they look nice and full. There we go. Add some more soil. Perfect. We're going to combine all the little ones in this container here, and these are actually all about the same size. They were just dotted around in different pots. We'll even plant the cuttings that were rooting in water. They're about the exact same size as these ones, so they'll quickly fill in. Make sure it's nice and symmetrical. Make sure everything is where we want it. Now we can just backfill. I'm just going to really overfill with this nice dry potting mix, and then we'll settle these in and give them a really good drink to settle them all in. I like to give them a little tap, a little shake, whatever you got to do to settle that soil. Don't be afraid to redo them if you're not happy with them. We'll just kind of even them out a little bit. I'm lifting these ones up so they're not burying too much of those leaves. Looks good. Now for the large one, this is the one that used to be really, really tall. So we'll give it a little bit of a base. Pop it right in the center, and then we can backfill around it. So this will look really nice by itself. It wasn't really overcrowded. It was just a little inconsistent, a little cluttered. We had some cuttings from all different sizes, from a whole bunch of different videos. So we're just giving the garden a little bit of consistency. So now that looks really nice. It's a beautiful little height. Not quite as tall as it was before, but that means it's not going to flop over on us. Now all we have to do is water everything in, so we'll give it a big communal drink, and that'll help everything get settled. I'm going to start with a spray bottle, just to clean everything up and to prep that soil to accept a little bit more water. Right now it's like a dry sponge, it'll just kind of bead off. But by just pre-soaking this a little bit, we'll get a lot more absorption. And we get to clean off all those little bits of soil. Makes them look really nice. We've really revitalized the succulent garden by making it more consistent. We may have to come back and soak these over and over again to really saturate that soil. And then we can let them dry out for maybe a couple weeks even. We do want to keep up on the watering now that it's spring, because these plants are going to start really absorbing moisture so that they can get ready for that summer season. I'll even water my tiny pot. This has a little bit of a jade plant, a little Grapthopetalum, and a little stacking crassula. Doesn't have any drainage, so I don't like to water it very often, but every now and then it can use a really nice healthy drink. It actually takes up a lot of water. It's a little bit easier than I thought it would be to maintain. I thought it'd be tricky to get the balance right, but really you can just overwater it, and if you have a bunch of excess, just pour it off. Then it'll be fine to dry out for another couple weeks. We've really consolidated our succulents today. We've combined everything by size so that we have really low stuff all in the same container with medium stuff and the taller stuff, really balancing each other out. Now that they're all consistent sizes, we should get really steady growth. So I hope you stay tuned and see how these change. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.